go ahead and. Good, that's not on record. We will go ahead and get started with our March 25th, 2025 meeting of the Des Moines Waterworks Board of Trustees. First on our agenda is our consent agenda, which includes minutes from February 25th, 2025 Board of Waterworks Trustees meeting, our minutes from March 4th, 2025 Finance and Audit Committee meeting, our minutes from March 11th, 2025 Planning Committee meeting, financial statements, list of payments for February 2025, a summary of our CEO approved expenditures in excess of $50,000, and our next meeting date of April 22nd, 2025. Is there a motion, or before I do that, is there anything that in there that anybody wants to call out?
A couple small edits on the minute from our last board meeting on consent agenda. That's to the second. So this must have been a carryover from last year. And then on the date was incorrect on minutes from the planning committee meeting. It was February dated to the March.
Good catches.
Indeed.
Any other items that need attention or additional discussion? Okay. Not hearing any, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda with as amended? Thank you.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Moving on to our first action item, which is, and it's moving on to our public comment period. If we have any members of the public that are interested in speaking, we'll ask for you to come forward. Any here with us or any online? Okay, well then we'll continue to jump right into the action items. We've got just a few action items today, so I anticipate a robust discussion on each of those. The first item up is the 2024 Des Moines Water Main Replacement Contract 1. Is a Northeast.
Yeah, and this is a public hearing.
Of course, it's a public hearing. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing for comments regarding the form of contract, plans and specifications and estimated cost. And then go ahead and close that public hearing. And do I assume correctly that there was no facility of the kind to be constructed available for rent or sharing from another agency?
Yes, but I think we want to vote on the
Closing of the hearing?
form of contract, plan specifications and estimated cost.
Okay. Well, then I will take a motion to move on the form of contract, plan specifications and estimated cost.
So moved. Second.
Sorry, Andrea, I took that out of order, my fault. Sorry,
I'm sorry. Are we where we need to be?
we are.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on the approval of the contract and plans. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And then moving on to an analysis of the bids received.
Andrea, in February, the board authorized staff to solicit bids for this project. We're going to replace water main on number of streets where we have older cast iron water mains that have reached the end of their useful life. We did open bids on March 18th. There were 4 bids. They're listed there. As you can see, the engineer's estimate for the project was $2.2 million. Had very good bids. very close in the range there. Corel Contractor was the successful low bidder with a bid of $2,015,990. They've completed a number of projects for Des Moines Waterworks successfully in the past, and staff would recommend that the board award this contract to Corel Contractor.
Okay, so we're looking for, we received the analysis of bids. And we're looking for an emotion to award the 2024 Des Moines Water Main Replacement Contract 1 Northeast Contract to Corel Contractor, Inc. in the amount of $2,015,990 and authorize the chairperson and CEO and general manager to execute the contract.
So move. Second.
Any discussion on this? I will, I should have asked this earlier, Ted, but whenever we kind of touched on this project beforehand, you mentioned that as you were analyzing the bids, there were shifts in how you anticipate, or how you were reading, or how staff was reading those bids. What type of things adjusted the potential costs?
It was just errors in the math that the
Oh, okay.
contractors did when they took their unit prices times the number of units and extended those prices and added up all the math. There were just some errors, and as staff went through and checked all of that, initially it looked like maybe there was going to be a different low bidder, and then there were other mistakes that were found that made it clear that the original low bidder, or the apparent low, was the low, which worked out best, but we had to do some math to get to that point, but it all worked out, and Corel was the apparent low at the bid opening, and they are low after all of the math.
Great, okay. Well, if there are no other questions or comments, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 3B is the acceptance of the 2024 FWTP 5 kilovolt system upgrades relays.
Andrea, in February of 2024, the board authorized award of a contract for upgrading the protective relays in our 5 kV equipment here at the Fluor Drive plant. All of the work associated with that project is now done. And there were 2 change orders in the course of the project totaling just over $15,000, so that the total final cost of the project's $147,530. This project the scope and the completion have been shared with the technical committee of Central Iowa Waterworks, and staff would recommend that the board accept the project.
Okay. Can I have a motion to accept the 2024 FWTP 5 kilovolt system upgrades on the relays completed by Qualis in the amount of $147,530?
Moved. Second.
Any discussion or questions?
Technical verbiage here that I only half explains. I don't know, Ted, if you want to give us just a quick.
Well, we have I don't know that I can give you the explanation that you want. But we have a 5,000 volt system that powers a lot of our pumps, 4160 volt power is what we use. And within all that system, there are controls and protections and a series of relays that monitor the system and make sure everything is right. And will, trip out or alarm if there are any problems. And those relays and the protective equipment was outdated. And so we had it replaced with updated relays and equipment to make sure that we're monitoring and controlling all that equipment appropriately. And if we need any more detail than that, we're gonna have to get it from Lindsay, because that's just some extent of my knowledge of that specific equipment.
I do have a question. I see that it was the Central Iowa Water Works Technical Committee was briefed on this project, and just a larger scope question is it the process or protocol to brief them on anything that our team sees as replacements or upgrades, or is there a dollar threshold that is set to kind of make sure that they're aware, or is there a dollar threshold to vote, or how does that work?
So the joint project, so Tammy, you have authorization to 50,000, right? And then otherwise we bring it to our joint projects. Des Moines Water Works will lead them, but we're still briefing them on these projects.
Okay, so we're always briefing them on joint projects, but
Yeah, when we meet every month at the
Okay.
technical committee. So anything we're bringing to you guys as a joint project, we bring to them just as a FYI.
So joint capital is anything that is related to upgrading or replacing or repairing existing facilities that you can think of it as benefiting everyone. There's another category which is expansion capital, which ultimately Central Iowa Water Works will be bidding, awarding, managing the expansion projects. We will continue to bid and award and manage the joint capital projects on our facilities. Even now that Central Iowa Water Works actually owns the facilities as part of our operating contractor responsibility, we will continue to do the maintenance, repair, and upgrade of our existing facilities, or the facilities that were ours that we owned prior to asset transfer. This was awarded in February of 2024, which was, before operational commencement. So there wasn't really even an option, but even today, we would award this contract and manage it through our engineering department and bring it to this board for approval, and just simply update the technical committee and let them know what's going on. That's kind of how the capital expenditures have been divided.
But is there at any point where there's like a major maintenance need or upgrade need where it is elevated to the level where the technical committee may need to vote, or is that just or is it just always our prerogative to keep the systems updated and maintained regardless and brief the technical committee
Yeah,
as it happens?
It's not in the budget, so if it wasn't in the budget, or if it's over 20% of the amount. I think something like 10%.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, so these projects are already in the budget for Central Iowa Water Works. So every year, the contract operator presents a budget of things that they anticipate are going to need to be repaired or replaced. That is sent through all the appropriate channels, the long range planning committee, the technical committee, then it comes to the board level and it's approved there. And then as we work through the year, something like this would just come to the technical committee for briefing. So the technical committee is not an approving body, it's a recommending body. And then if it was not in the budget at all, it would go to the CIWW board for approval. If it was in the budget and it's within the budgeted amount, it's just an informational piece. If it exceeds the budget, the contract operator has the opportunity to reallocate from some other item that they have already included in their own budget. If it exceeds their overall budget, then it would need to go to the CIWW board for approval for extra allocation of funding.
Okay,
I think that's helpful.
that is very helpful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Mhm.
So this one was a non-issue. It was just
Great.
just informational.
information.
I'm sure I'll probably ask that question the next time something like this comes through, but for now, any other questions?
Process question. It sounds, if I read it correctly, that the work associated with the change order has already been completed, and this is us signing off on the revised contract total. Is there a certain threshold of change order that needs to go to the board for approval before the work's executed?
If it's over my spending authority, which is 125,000 as a change order, which would be a big change order, but we do have them from time to time that size. If it's over that size, it would have to come to the board. We've also kind of had the practice if the accumulation of change orders over the scope of a large project gets to be 125,000 or is going to exceed that, then we'll bring it to the board. But, this one was 15, so, but the CEO spending authority is the line that we've used.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving on to item 3C is the acceptance of the 2024 multiple facilities roof repairs.
Yeah, Andrea, this is another contract that was awarded in 2024. This one in September, awarded to Academy Roofing and Sheet Metal. We did repairs on a number of roofs across the utility under this project, including all 3 treatment plants, the Polk County Pumping Station, and possibly others. Each location had a number of repairs made, all bundled into this one contract. The work is all done now. There was one change order totaling $6,500 for a total final contract price of $143,485. This again is a project that the technical committee was briefed on, but because of the dollar amount, they didn't need to do any voting or anything like that. It's just considered joint capital. And we would recommend that the board accept the project.
Do I have a motion to accept the 2024 multiple facilities roof repair contract completed by Acme Roofing and Sheet Metal Company in the amount of $143,485.
So move.
Second.
Any questions? Okay, well, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 3D is to request authorization to reimburse the city of Windsor Heights for water main replacement for the city of Windsor Heights 68th Street Improvement Project.
Andrea, this is a project that the city of Windsor Heights actually bid 68th Street improvements within the city. As part of that project, we are going to replace 2,100 feet of water main that is aging and in need of repair. We collect money in Windsor Heights water rates, the rates that we charge directly to their customers for their water fund, and we hold those funds for them. And then when they need to spend those funds as part of a project within the city, they can request that we reimburse them for that. Sometimes we also just do water main replacement projects where we bid a contract and we'll actually use those funds to replace water mains in Windsor Heights. But in this case, they're going to do a street project. The water main is going to be replaced as part of that, and they have requested reimbursement based on the unit prices that were already bid as part of their bid project or their bid package for their project. The water main relocation will cost $311,014.04. And the funds will come from what we've collected from Windsor Heights in their rates. And we would recommend that the board authorize staff to reimburse the city of Windsor Heights once the work is complete.
Okay. I need a motion to authorize staff to reimburse City of Windsor Heights for water main replacement included in the 68th Street Improvement Project.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? All right, I will go ahead and vote on this last action item. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And then into our information items. The first up would be the board committee reports, starting with Finance and Audit Committee.
And then I was trying to look through and I might have deleted my notes. Which annoys me because I actually was like taking notes because I know it was a very good topic.
Strategic plan initiatives for 2025 was the topic.
Yeah.
That's it,
Oh.
yeah, that's, I was like, yeah, so I was trying to take the numbers, so I apologize. Notes in front of me, wherever they went, I don't know, but, I mean, I know as we've talked many times, you know, with CIP, one of the overarching themes is just the numbers are getting bigger, and that's because we're getting bigger as a community, things are costing more. The additional supply is also cost more to come on board. Amy, did you have any
Yeah, I
comments?
might
on it?
just highlight a couple changes that we made to the CIP process this year. For the last several years, it's been a 5-year window, and with the coordination with Central Iowa Water Works and all of the expansion that's on the horizon, we have really stretched ourselves to a 10-year window, which is a challenge. Especially the second 5-year window is, I call it more fluid, harder to see that far out. And the reason for that is so that we can have a little bit more robust financial modeling, both from a Central Iowa Water Works perspective, so that we can have a better idea of what our purchased water costs will be, as well as for our own purposes. So that was an important change this year. And then a large portion, about half of the CIP, will be reimbursed to Des Moines Water Works from Central Iowa Water Works. That's the joint capital we were talking about. And then we will pay our share of that through our water rates. So I would say those are a couple key highlight of changes.
Well, thank you very much.
Great. Any questions about this CIP? So that we'll continue to see that as we move throughout the year and start executing projects, and it will be a continuous topic of conversation, I imagine.
Yes, and I also will add, if I may, that CIWW has all the producer CIPs, and so they will be consolidating those. And then presenting to the CIWW board. It's an iterative process now. It's done a couple different layers. And so we will plan to bring the CIP back once we have an iteration of the CIWW board and get their input, and then we will ask for approval of the 10-year CIP in May.
Okay.
From this board.
Okay. And so also, just so I'm understanding, our CIP is probably then broken into 2 different sections. One that is the producer side and one is the distributor. Okay, great. Any other questions? Planning committee.
That's me. We had a good presentation from the Icon Water Trails team, supported by Mark Land from Snyder and Associates. They briefed us on planned work at the McClure Drive site on the north side of the river, just north of Gray's Lake. That construction work will begin over the summer. As a part of that, there'll be some portage improvements near the Bowhead Dam on the river. And so what's actionable for this group is that an easement will be necessary to grant access to that portage site. That will come to this board in our meeting. And we had a good discussion with the team about incorporating education elements into the water trails site. Graham, anything you want to add there?
Nope, I don't have anything to add.
When you say portage around the floor treatment plants,
Portage around the dam.
portage around the dam. Oh, over here. Okay. Okay.
The one thing we did discuss, Andrea, that would be of interest to you was, if there's going to be public access, in that area, especially around the dam, there's an opportunity there for education.
Mhm.
And I suggested that Des Moines Waterworks and Icon work together to educate people about the purpose of the dam, that we use that dam to raise the water levels, because it provides the majority of our drinking water in this area. And it's an opportunity to educate people just from a community standpoint, but also hopefully create some respect for the dam so that people don't inadvertently damage it. They understand that it has a real purpose that affects them every day. And then that discussion kind of led to, other ways to cooperate on education, so that the education that Icon does coordinates with what goes on at Des Moines Waterworks Park and other places. So I thought that was a healthy discussion, and is one that we at Waterworks need to continue to have with the Des Moines Waterworks Park Foundation and Icon.
It's a good point, and I'll make a note and try to remember to bring that up at our next, Park Foundation meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I told him about the work we're doing at the Stowe Foundation and Water Curia, in cooperation with the Des Moines Waterworks Park to create that signage and that, those educational opportunities, and that we want to make sure that we hand off visitors, if you will, who come to Water Curia, who come to the park, who go to Icon, from one piece to the other. And, I just think there's a huge opportunity to educate people about how we provide drinking water, the threats to drinking water, and that sort of thing. And we need to be smart, work together, and make sure we're not, reinventing the wheel and spending dollars that we don't need to spend. If one group, whether it be Icon or Stowe Foundation or Parks or Waterworks, are creating materials or signage or whatever, we should all share those things. So that was a healthy discussion.
Great. Next up would be an update from CIWW.
I can take that in Diane's absence, Andrea. The Central Iowa Waterworks Board met on February 26th. A couple of things there. One, they established a water use best practice committee, which is intended to identify best practices for managing peak demand so that we can potentially delay the need for expansion of treatment capacity, which is going to be very expensive and probably in everyone's best interest if we can forestall that for a period of time. And they also approved or adopted the Polk County Multi-Jurisdictional Local Hazard Mitigation Plan, which is something this board did fairly recently and allows us the opportunity to submit projects for funding through mitigation dollars. We thought it was important to make sure that both CIWW and Des Moines Waterworks had approved and adopted that plan because CIWW now owns some of the facilities that we might be applying for grant funding to improve. They approved a joint capital project spending authority policy, which we just talked about, this whole joint capital spending and how and when we get authorization from who. And that was a policy that was sort of formalized there and approved. And then they authorized advertisement or request for qualifications for preliminary engineering on some work we want to do at the Grimes plant to expand the capacity there. And expansion of wells at the new West plant. So those were kind of the highlights from last month's board meeting.
We mentioned the CIP and some of those highlights, and I got an email from Sue today just mentioning how pleased she was with the discussions that are taking place in that finance and audit committee meeting. And I'm wondering if whether or not at our finance and audit committee meeting, it may make sense to have some sort of joint CIWW and Des Moines Waterworks CIP kind of review to see the decisions that CIWW is making for their capital improvements and their focus and priorities, as well as how that, integrates with our own.
I think that will be natural because I think we'll want to evaluate that considering the rate increase
Sure.
from CIWW. I think that would be.
Okay. Yeah, great. Any other thoughts or questions related to CIWW?
What is the West plant?
The study that we had done recently to help identify where capacity needed to be added to the system identified three priorities. One is to expand the Saylorville plant, which is our plant up north that we're expanding. One is some expansions at the Grimes plant, which is an existing treatment plant in Grimes. And then the third thing that they recommended was the West plant, which was a plant that West Des Moines was considering building with Van Meter and possibly Waukee before Central Iowa Waterworks came to be. They've got a potential well field there. They had a plant site, but unfortunately that got purchased for a data center. So now we're actually looking for another plant site. Shocking. Yeah, it's really
Not
driving up.
using water there.
And no, it's using water, driving property values way up. But it's a site, a plant that's going to be west of the Des Moines metro area. We don't have a site specifically for it yet, but along the Raccoon River and use shallow groundwater along the Raccoon River. So it's in development.
There are no other questions, and we can move on to the Des Moines Waterworks Park Foundation report. I can start off by sharing, as always, there was a run through of all the various events that are coming to the park and excitement as the weather starts changing to see things being able to be planned and incorporated. And there was again, robust discussion of the Park Foundation's finances and business plan going into this season. And realizing some of the steps that they will have to do to continue to maintain a good relationship with banks and donors, and establishing some additional income revenue streams. In addition to that, the Park Foundation is also trying to build out their education piece with upcoming Earth Day celebrations and festivals, and building out their website and so forth. I think that's generally, without getting too much into the weeds, that what the last committee meeting was about. But I will turn Pat or Amy to see if I am missing anything that they would like to highlight. Okay. So then that brings us to our CEO and general manager comment.
Andrea, first thing I'd like to touch on is the CEO selection process, which is moving along. The application period for folks interested in applying for the CEO position closed on Friday at noon. I believe there are a total of 18 applicants. April has spent some time kind of vetting through those. I'm trying to kind of prioritize and categorize the applicants, and I think Doug is going to share with us what the next steps in that process will be.
The HR team has scheduled the phone screen.
I can't hear Doug.
Oh.
Graham can't hear.
Me
You want to go up to
share
the podium?
a mic or whip a mic around.
The HR team has scheduled the initial phone screen interviews with a select number of candidates, and those will take place this week. And from there, then we'll have further information to share with the board at that point.
Yes, if appropriate, I believe that once the HR team gets through those initial phone screening process, that we would be in the position to kind of share the remaining applicants' resume packages with the remaining, or with the rest of the board, to provide feedback, questions, to kind of get your thoughts on digging deeper there. Alec and I have been having continued conversation with the HR team to understand the best way, if there are board members interested in actually participating in interviews, the best way to do that, to not end up having a potential candidate sit through 5 separate interviews with the board. John's been part of those discussions as well. But I think as we as Doug mentioned with this first step, we'll get through the phone screening and then see where we go with information and what the next steps are, when we have a better understanding of how many candidates we're left with.
And
Yep.
Andrea, do you expect that we would have possibly a special board meeting between now and the April board meeting to discuss this?
Potentially. It would be great if we were able, and I'm saying this kind of hypothetically, because a lot of that depends on the HR team's ability to line things up between now and then. But it would certainly be great if we were able to coordinate any type of board conversations that we wanted to have with those candidates. before the April board meeting, and if we were able to identify any stakeholder meetings and stakeholder panel interviews we would want to have before then.
I guess I'm not following. How do we decide which candidates we're interviewing without having a meeting?
Oh, I see.
It seems like we need to have a meeting in order to decide the process.
Well, right now, remind me, Doug, how many phone screens are you setting up?
5.
They've scheduled 5 meetings. How, I guess I'll just ask the board here and save us some time. What number are you hoping to get to narrow down the interviews that the candidates that would then move on to the interview process with the board and stakeholders?
I don't have a number, not knowing anything about the candidates. I don't know how to answer that question.
Okay,
I think one option might be for HR to do phone screens with the 5 candidates that they consider to be the top 5. And then if they get through that process and still believe that there are 5 viable candidates, there could be as many as 5 who were interviewed. That would be one option.
So potentially the board gets presented a slate of 5 candidates, correct?
That's a
correct.
possibility.
Possibility.
And then at that point, Andrea, it seems like we need to have a meeting to decide if we're going to interview all 5 or we're going to interview 3 or what we're going to do. Is that what you're thinking?
I'm thinking that once we get through those phone screens, the remaining applicants, which may be as many as 5, could be less than 5. Those information packets of resumes and any additional supplement material would get shared with the board. And at that point, you all would have the opportunity to scan through that information and kind of make your own notes to decide if there's anything that needs to be asked, clarified, or automatic red flag. And then from that, we would have to have some sort of discussion to then narrow it down to if we're interviewing all 5 or a smaller number. What I'm trying to figure out how we do this is within the grace of public meetings. I don't know if if there is a consensus that, everybody is all over the board with interviewing all 5 or a consensus with interviewing. I mean, once we open that door, are we then discussing the names of all of these individuals, which may or may not be in the best interest of these individuals? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So John, guide us here. We get, let's just say we get 5 candidates recommended from the HR team. And that information still remains confidential, even though it's passed with the board. Is that correct?
To the extent that the information could be deemed personnel information, it could remain confidential. I will tell you that this area has gotten much more complicated.
Oh, I know.
Than prior interview processes that we've done. And what I would like to do is to provide the board with, I guess, a summary of my legal opinion about the way to navigate through this. Not in an open meeting because it's protected legal advice. So I can do that and kind of address the concern that you have, Graham.
Yep, that would be helpful, John, because that would give us a document to guide this process. Because I realize that we're kind of in a unknown territory because of recent court rulings, but we want to do this correctly. And so what I might suggest, Andrea, is that in a way you let HR do its work, narrow down that narrowing down that list to whatever number it is. We'll get John's legal opinion, hopefully, which will guide us to determine whether, how we have a meeting to make the decision about, holding interviews and that sort of thing. But I wonder if we might, just to be mindful of time, think about holding hold a special meeting time, maybe on the Finance and Audit Committee date or on the Planning Committee date, just as a possibility that we might have a special board meeting to have this discussion based on John's legal opinion. Does that make sense?
So let me just make sure I completely understand. So your suggestion of a potential special board meeting would happen to discuss John's recommended process or to start executing?
We
John.
don't know, because I think there's unknowns here, right? There's unknowns about how many candidates HR is going to forward to us. We've got to wait and see that. We need to read John's legal opinion and to decide, and based on his recommendations, what type of meeting we might have. But not knowing exactly what type of meeting we might have, I'm just suggesting that maybe we hold a date as a special meeting pending HR's report and John's legal opinion.
We have, I mean, just from a logistical or requirements, if we're going to meet, do we have to post it in so many days notice? And if we cancel, do we have to post it?
24
You have to
hours.
post an agenda that provides a reasonable, to the public with a reasonable description of what you're gonna discuss, which, if you anticipate that you're gonna interview or have discussion
Yep.
about CEO selection, that would be adequate to inform the
Yeah.
public.
So to Graham's, I mean, so I guess really it's mostly just managing everyone's schedules as to why we would
Yes.
want to make sure.
Right.
Right,
But if-
Yes.
but I guess my greater question is, our next Finance and Audit Committee meeting is in a week. Would John have time and HR have time to get us to be prepared to have such a discussion one way or the other in a week or two?
HR will be prepared.
And maybe we do
Yes.
it in 2 weeks,
In 2 weeks?
the 8th, just hold a date,
I was gonna suggest that
the 8th.
seems a little more, yeah.
Yeah, let's just hold the 8th. That way we have a date out there, right, guys? And then we can see what happens and determine whether we need to have it or not.
Does that work for
I guess
everyone?
that'd technically be the planning committee meeting.
Yeah, and what I would propose is that we just simply schedule a potential special board meeting at 3:30 for the full board. And then we'll have that meeting and whatever discussion, and then when that's over, we can just move into the planning committee with whoever is able to stay for the planning committee meeting.
That makes sense.
That works.
Does that fit with your all's schedule? In the meantime, what do you all suggest for identifying any additional outside panels? I know that we definitely want to ensure that we're giving an opportunity to our labor leaders and any other CIWW and any other folks that might be beneficial to have a conversation with potential candidates. Is there a process for identifying who those people might be and getting that scheduled so we can move forward as soon as we're ready?
Okay, so we have amongst ourselves already had some discussions about who those stakeholders might be and how we would want to have those meetings occur if and when we're ready for that. So we have even a tentative schedule made for those and who those people are. We've not notified anyone, obviously, just because we want to wait till we are more solidified in who the finalists are and what we can or can't share with people. But we did include in our discussions, it would involve, waterworks leadership, waterworks supervisors, the bargaining unit leadership, and CIWW.
And I should acknowledge that you guys did a great job of putting together said schedule, but I just want to ask those questions again. One, to put it out in this public forum for discussion and sharing. And also just making sure that you know, beyond knowing that there are stakeholder panels, that you guys have moved forward with actually identifying who's on those stakeholder panels. Okay, great. Any other questions or discussion?
Curious what the general criteria was for going from the 18 to the 5.
So one, we had to look at, do you meet the minimums of the job description? And the knowledge, skills, and abilities that it required. Then we looked at also your experience with water or exposure to water or utilities. We looked at most everyone's public sector anyway, but we looked into those things as well. And so I think those are like some of the heavier weights that we looked at with people.
I would say they provided us with all 18
Okay.
for Andrea and I. It's kind of a, you know, these people we would move along, these people we probably wouldn't, but I looked through all of them, and I would say pretty much agreed with
The
what
5 were clear.
I think we originally had 7, and then we subsequently through some conversations with 5, so.
We looked at references as well, like some people have letters.
Thank you.
Any other discussion regarding the CEO selection process?
A couple other things I'd like to share if I could.
Okay,
Okay,
well, you still can.
while I still can. Nitrates are on the rise. The raccoon is over 11 milligrams per liter today, which the drinking water standard is 10. I assume we're not on the raccoon at all today. We are blending with the Des Moines, or the finished water nitrates went above 7 today, which necessitates us communicating with the member agencies of Central Iowa Water Works that there are some special requirements should you have to do a boil advisory when the finished water nitrate is above 7. So Nathan sends out an email. Did you include Tammy on that too? Oh, very good. Good for you. So we're into nitrate season, I guess, is the message in March. Not entirely unusual or unexpected with the rains that we've had, but it begins. Quick update on our residential water use project. You know, we have been communicating with our customers about the opportunity to participate in what we're calling our Flume project. Flume is the vendor that we're using. We have 150 customers now who have purchased a Flume device. Only about half of them have been installed so far, so people have them sitting at home in boxes. But I've just bumped into a couple of people out in the public who knew me and had them, are very excited about it. It's pretty cool to watch the water usage, and we've had a few leak alerts already in those 60 some customers. Have a few people who've identified leaks. And the last thing I would share, and I've shared this with some of you already, but the American Water Works Association, the national organization, has a conference every year, and it's, you know, many hundreds of people attend that conference. This year it's in Denver, and at the opening general session of that conference, where everybody comes to hear the keynote speaker and to kind of kick off the conference, they have what they call the opening general session video, and it's a kind of highly produced video, and it always highlights 2 or 3 utilities across the country who are doing something really cool. And this year they're going to highlight Central Iowa Water Works as one of the 4 utilities that's doing something cool in the country. So next month, there'll be a production crew here from AWWA to interview people and to take some video of probably our treatment plants and our staff and whatnot. So that's pretty exciting to be recognized as one of 4 utilities in the country this year who are doing something that everyone should know about. So it's a big deal. And lastly, for me, I would just note for the board that there's a safety memo included in the packet. Dylan highlights some safety management software that we're implementing this year that was going to help us track safety training, leading indicators, follow up on concerns that are reported through all of those processes. We've had 2 recordable injuries to date. Fortunately, they were both fairly minor. Of course, we don't ever want to have anyone get injured, but if they are injured, at least in these cases, they were fairly minor. So that's it for me.
2 things. I just want to thank Dylan and anybody else involved with the safety memo. I know it's kind of at the end of our meeting agenda, but it is something that we ask for and value to keep a tab on how folks are doing and how safe our workplace is for people doing this essential job. The other thing I wanted to point out is that unless somebody else is going to talk about community outreach in the legislative update, I don't think you're done.
Oh, well, having a tough time today. I will give you a quick legislative update. There are 2 things that we've been watching pretty closely. One is our lead service line disclosure legislation. We introduced that with a coalition of other communities across the state. It did make it through committees on both sides in both chambers, and so it's eligible for debate essentially till the end of session. It hasn't come out for debate on either side or in either chamber yet because last week it was some of the rules they follow. This week it's because they just have a lot on their plate and they want to get other things done that haven't met the second funnel requirements, and so they're trying to manage through all that. And then it'd probably be after the second funnel, being our bill is funnel proof, it will probably come out for debate after. But we do have commitment, at least strong commitment on the House side to bring it out for debate. And I think if it gets out, it will pass. No opposition at this point, thanks in part to some work that Jenny has done and others related to educating the realtor community on what we're really trying to accomplish here. So that's a positive. It isn't every year that we get legislation introduced and passed. It's kind of an uphill battle. The other piece of legislation that we're following very closely is the legislation that would allow city councils to eliminate municipal utility boards with a single vote instead of a referendum, which is what's currently required in Iowa Code Chapter 388. That made it through committee on the Senate side, but it was amended pretty dramatically from that city council opportunity to eliminate water boards to simply a shortening of the notice period for the referendum for any board to be eliminated from 60 to 30 days. So it went from water only and a city council vote to all utilities and just shortening the notice period before the public vote, which we think is a positive. So it's a win compared to what it was originally. That has made it through the Senate and has been approved by the Senate. And it has been scheduled for subcommittee tomorrow. But assuming that there are no amendments and it's just a shortening of that notice period, we're not going to oppose that. I'm guessing it will pass and there will be a shorter notice period required, but that will be all. Now, am I done? What else did I forget
I think
today?
that's it. I
Okay.
think you're did
Sorry.
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrea, if I may, we could take 1 minute and go back to the CEO search process. Is that okay? In our past searches, we actually named a search committee. We didn't do that in this case, which is fine with me. But in that being the case, the board is the search committee, and I just want to make sure that we all understand the chair and the vice chair don't have any authority here to make any decisions about, the process or anything independently. Those decisions are made by the entire board, which is why I was recommending this meeting. I just wanted to be clear about that in case there was any confusion.
Sure, no, I appreciate that.
Okay, great.
Any other comments, questions for the good of the cause?
If I could jump back up on the Parks Foundation,
Yes.
the February 14th minutes, there was mention of a potential legal action by Sam Summers. You shed any more light on
Sure.
the potential exposure you might have?
Sure. No, the utility, as far as I'm aware, has no exposure on that. The situation there is that the Park Foundation has a promoter relationship with Sam Summers and a contract therefore. And the contract has certain limitations on when the Park Foundation can work with outside promoters to secure acts for the amphitheater. In this particular situation, I would call it a miscommunication between the Park Foundation with our new executive director and First Fleet on when that date was that they could start soliciting outside work with outside promoters to secure acts for the amphitheater. There is discussion going back and forth between the Park Foundation and Sam Summers. I don't think it would become a legal action. I think there's just continued conversations being held. Like I said, between our executive director and some additional board members who have legal expertise to try to come to a resolution on that. But as a utility, we don't have the exposure. Anything else? Okay. Then with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
letting
all.
me join remotely.
Yes, thank you.
See ya.
See ya.
Legally required to.
Well, don't let
But
me
you're
know
welcome.
that,
Yeah.
you know.